Welcome.
Live.
Welcome to Midwife After Hours. This is our special full moon edition. This is recorded live, and I am so excited to be here with my beautiful yogi, sage woman, wise woman, Blair Fillingham, my co-host. And today we are delighted to have invited a very special guest. And this guest is Sahara Lee. And she is a woman extraordinaire, which you are going to discover in this interview. She's curating experience over the last 20 years, working in movement, working in yoga, working in Ayurveda. She has also been a published author, and she races sailboats in her spare time. So I am so delighted to have both of you with me today. Thank you both for being here, Sahara and Blair.
Great to be here.
Yeah. So one of the wonderful things that Sahara is going to be able to share with us that we're so delighted about is the moon and the moon cycles and how it relates to us as women in fertility. I just am I have a love of the moon in my life, and I know Blair does too. And we're all going to have an open conversation here. We invite you to join us. We're going to try to make it a more air-friendly version, but you can also tune into a less air-friendly version with any one of us anytime.
Not that we're going to hold back any of the real story of what we see or feel or know about moon cycles. I think between the three of us, we've probably had a lot of direct experience with tracking how our cycles align to moon cycles. And I'm sure we've read dozens of books between the three of us, and we probably know so many things, but also I think we're scratching the surface, and everything we say, frankly, is, I think, direct experience, and a lot of it through that wise woman tradition of passing down data from one woman to another. But Sahara has the Ayurvedic lens as well, an ancient medical lens, science that might be really cool to see how those two things line up.
Yes, yes. So, Sahara, tell us more.
It was funny when Blair first contacted me to do this with you guys. I was thinking about it. We had been talking about menstrual cycles. So I just assumed like that was the moon cycle we were talking about. And then I was thinking later that day, I was like, wait, it's on the full moon. Maybe we're talking about moon cycles. And then I was like, maybe we're talking about all the cycles. I don't know. I'm just going to wait. I'm not even going to ask. I'm just going to wait and see what we're going to talk about.
Well, that's like a really good like jumping in point, I think, because some women talk about being on their moon. And so that you're talking about that menstrual cycle. And I know that for years I worked to sync my bleeding with the moon, and have had all kinds of ups and downs with wanting to be in tune with the moon and wanting to either bleed with the new moon. Some of us bleed then, some of us bleed with the full moon. You know, moving from the city to the country, it was when I really noticed my body starting to sync with the moon, because of just being more exposed to the variation in light at night versus being in the city where you've got light on all the time. So your body doesn't necessarily recognize when it's supposed to bleed and when it's supposed to ovulate. But also felt like a trap to me, feeling like I needed to sync with the moon. It's like, wait, no, I've got my own moon cycle. I do not have to do what the tides are doing. The tides don't always even do what the moon does. So, you know, like there's no rule. There's no 28-day rule that we have to follow. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think this is the thing that Ayurveda blessed me with, is that everybody is unique. So there's not a diet that's going to work for everybody. There isn't a spice that's going to work for everybody. There's not a practice that's going to work for everybody. And you do fall into this a lot in yogic traditions of like, you have to be up at this hour to do this thing and sing this mantra and do, you know, and that's true for some people, and it really works well for some people. It doesn't work for everybody. So everybody needs to find their own rhythm. And that includes our menstrual rhythm, our moon rhythm, and it might align with the moon and it might not. And there's no right or wrong. As long as you're having a healthy menstruation cycle, I don't particularly care when you bleed, just as long as it's healthy. You know, it's one of those, like having a baby, like really, I just want it to be healthy. Who cares what else is going on? So that's been the gift of Ayurveda for me, especially as a woman, where we have been taught by society and by history that we need to be something that's in this little box that has been created and cultivated over hundreds of thousands of years. And it's like, yeah, no, that's not right. So Ayurveda was really freeing. And I had just gotten off birth control when I discovered Ayurveda. So it really helped me through that process, because that can be such a gnarly process for the body. Like if you've been on the pill for 10 years, pretty much I went on it when I was 15 and I went off of it probably around 23, 24. Yeah, I got my first moon when I was 12. So 3 years later, I go on birth control, and my body is it's put on autopilot as far as hormones and menstruation is concerned. And now, as like an adult woman, I had to figure out, or my body had to figure it out, and it took years. But Ayurveda really helped me in that, because I could recognize what I needed just by tuning into my body and being like, what do I feel like right now? I feel hot, so I need to cool off. I feel dry, so I need to have, more liquid in my life in some way, more oil. So teaching myself about myself.
Please excuse me.
No, that was it.
Oh, okay. One of the things for people that are having that disconnect with their cycles and having challenges with it is to exactly what both of you have alluded to, really have a time to coordinate with nature, really have a time to have that be what is setting the stage for your body. And the disconnects, the opportunities for disconnect are far greater than the opportunities of connect. But very often when people have more of that time actually in nature, and the moon has always been special to me. As a midwife, you're often going in the light or the dark of the moon. So all those different times are important. The moon calls to me, though. I must each month howl at the moon. And when I say howl at the moon, everybody thinks that's so sweet. That's so nice. I was at my niece's a few years ago and I asked permission to howl at the moon. And she's like, well, sure, go ahead. And she was expecting me to go, oh, that is not a howl at the moon. I mean, a howl at the moon comes from as deep inside as you even have a depth to go to. And she said that was like a growl and grunt and all of these things that we just had an occasion following the loss of her mom. It's very tender. It just happened. But we went to a lake at sunset. We went down beside the lake and we're running around. And then I just let out a howl and she did too. And she's like, oh, that feels good. It's like, yes, it does feel good to really let it all out and to really, yeah. So I don't know about anybody else, but it is for me an extremely heightened time for lovemaking.
Oh, yes. We'll have to talk about that on the radio.
It's like, just wait till a full moon, baby. No.
Well, in Ayurveda, that's when they say that it's the best time. You actually, there's so many moon things in Ayurveda, but it's like you put out a glass of milk and you let it sit in the moon, and then you drink the milk, and then you make love to bring a baby.
Wow,
Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
Ritual. That's an Ayurvedic ritual.
That's
for
an
baby.
Ayurvedic ritual.
Which I always thought was fresh cow. It's from India, so it's fresh cow milk.
Wow, yeah.
But I found it very interesting because at the same time, a lot of the yogic traditions talk about you're supposed to bleed on the full moon and you're supposed to, ovulate on the new moon. And my body goes in the opposite way. Most of the time, not it makes its own rules most of the time as well. But I always thought that was really because I don't have any children. I've never wanted any children. But I love the ritual around the idea of ritual around children, around the idea of calling in the spirit and saying, listing out the lessons that you want to learn from this other being, because you're going to learn lessons regardless of whether you want to. These babes, they teach you so much. They crack you wide open, and it's, I love that idea of ritual and intention and calling that spirit in and saying, this is what I want to learn, and this is what I want to cultivate, and this is what I want to share with the world, and letting it be a more conscious contract than just something that happens like whoops. Which the whoopses are great too, but when you have the opportunity to set that intention, it's like, man, why not take it?
Yeah, and that's something about the cycle of the moon that invites that ritual every single month. And what I'm learning as a woman is I take my own moon cycle and then the actual moon cycle really seriously, and using it as like a monthly opportunity to restate my intentions for me and restate my intentions for my purpose in the world. And I follow my own little ritual of, on day 1, I journal about one thing. Day 2, I journal about another thing. Happy to quickly list those things. The first day I journal about my, who I am. Who am I? And I revisit that. On day 2, I check in with a brother. So how are my brothers doing on their spiritual journey? I use my super moon power to support them. Day 3, I question my purpose in the world and I restate my purpose from scratch. And day 4, I plant some seeds. And day 5, I offer my blood to Gaia, to the earth. So I collect my blood through the week with a menstrual cup, and then I take it out into the forest and I do a little ceremony and sing to the trees and offer my blood to the earth. And it's been an incredibly powerful process to accept that I can kind of go through a death and rebirth every month and rebirth myself. We're kind of doing that. It feels like, because this full moon brings you to this place. It brings me to my knees almost every month, where I'm like, it's so much. And then we go, okay, well, let's just reset and start from scratch and just keep trying. So yeah,
it's such a powerful time, and I'd love your opinion on this, ladies, because this is a touchy subject for many, many people. But so I think we all know, and some people know and some people don't, that during a woman's moon, during their menstrual cycle, it's a very thin veil between us and spirit world. So we have a great opportunity for doing a lot of healing for ourselves, doing a lot of clearing, doing a lot of manifestation. And I don't find it odd that we are not allowed in many cultures into the temple during this time under the guise of we are dirty. And to me, I'm like, no, this is the patriarchy that has been built in, telling us we're too powerful to go into this temple space. What might happen if we let a woman come into her power? So the really sensitive aspect of this topic, and where I have gotten myself into trouble in the past, is that I purposely break those rules within the, so people go, you're not respecting the culture, and I'm saying the culture is not respecting humanity. The culture is not respecting a woman. So I don't see it. I mean, obviously it's not as violent or horrific as genital mutilation, a lot of things that cultures do to women to rob us of our power, but I do find it as a more subtle way of robbing us of our power. And I equate them in a very similar manner, that you're clipping my wings and you're trying to put me in a box, and you're trying to keep your masculinity safe for fear that my femininity will in some way harm your masculinity, which is not the truth. So I'd love to know your opinion on this, on the idea of purposely breaking these rules and in a sacred manner, spending time in these places, these sacred places where women have been told no.
Roxanne.
Yeah, I have not heard that spoken quite as well as you just captured it. I love that. I do have the knowledge that in so many ways within the culture that has reigned for all of this time, which is coming to a shift right now in a powerful way, that we will hear more and more about the recognition of that shift that you're speaking of the shift of feminine no longer being subservient and no longer being something that we have to uh, hide away, but it is a source of power that needs to be brought forth. And I both salute and appreciate that fact that this is one of those aspects of bringing it forth. I find it interesting, and it was occurring to me how many women go through so much pain associated with their cycle. And you have to wonder, and I have more than a wonder, I have a kind of a convincing that a lot of that pain comes from that suppression aspect
Yeah.
of it, and that is a source of ongoing pain, is the fact, or not the fact, but the notion that we have to suppress ourselves,
Yeah.
and that's been acceptable, non-acceptable, and our bodies don't accept it. Now, there's definitely things that we can do that will aggravate pain that seem to fall at that same time. But even that is a hunting and a searching for something more that is not being experienced. It's a time where caffeine and chocolate and those kinds of things are often craved. And I do believe that that is part of that craving for a fuller expression. And I think that we're beginning to let this out and to come into our truth, come into our speaking of our truth. And as we do that, then more and more power is unleashed, and less numbing of our system and dummying down, if you would, or seeking to soothe rather than to allow to come forth.
Allowing the roar, allowing the howl.
Yes.
And I saw you reached for your throat there as you were talking about speaking truth, and my hand immediately went to my womb at the
Yes.
same time. And that, with these chakras, we talk about chakras in yoga and Ayurveda, and in my exploration of yoga, I found that connection with that womb chakra, the Svadhisthana, and the throat chakra, the Vishuddhi, directly related to each other. And so I'm sure you've experienced it in childbirth, hundreds and hundreds of times, Roxanne, where you're seeing
Hundreds. Yes.
once that woman is able to speak her truth, or to howl, or make that horrible, animalistic, guttural sound, something happens in the womb, and the cervix releases and softens. And I just come back to the wisdom that is there in our womb, and the amount of shame that has been placed around the dirtiness, as you say, Sahara. Like there's like a shame that's been placed on us that you're dirty if you're bleeding, and like keep that to yourself and stay away from society, or take all the medications so that you can work through it and push through it. And show up to work, because God forbid you call into work and say you have cramps, because then everyone's going to think you're weak. So, we're kind of either shamed, or we're told to suppress it and ignore it, rather than that time being an opportunity to howl and to roar and to speak the truth and to say, I'm feeling things. And that veil is maybe thinner, and we're knowing things in that time that we kind of forget for the rest of the month. when the veil kind of comes back down again and we go back into our routine and day-to-day life. But gosh, when that veil is thin, I think especially if you layer the full moon and bleeding at the same time, that veil is real thin, and there's some truth that comes through, but we might hurt people if we roar at them. So it's kind of scary.
I don't know. We might hurt people if we roar at them. That's very interesting to me because of something that came up for me yesterday, where I decided I was finishing like a self-healing journey of the last 5 weeks. And I decided that I was giving people in my life a 3-strike rule of, if you have done something that hurts me, I will talk to you about it once and we will have a conversation about what needs to change and where we're both coming from, and we'll get on the same page. And then if you do it again, we'll have the same conversation. We'll add on anything we need to add on. But if you do it a third time, you're out. I'm not going to continue to give people chance after chance after chance to not hurt me. That to me just seems like the least that a human being deserves is like for you not to hurt me to stay in my life. And I said this to a friend of mine, and his response was panic and worry. And he said to me, I hope this doesn't bring you too much pain. And I feel like society has taught us as a human race, not just women, but as humans, that speaking our truths and holding a boundary is hurtful to others. And so he and I had a conversation around this, and it was just like, this is going to cause you a lot of pain. You're going to have to kick a lot of people out of your life. And I just said, by no means has it ever in the history of history has holding a boundary and setting a boundary and holding a boundary been more painful than the pain you will feel when you abandon yourself over and over and over to protect other people's gentle psyche. And I think that we have created a world where we do not speak to each other honestly because we are so afraid of someone's feelings getting hurt or triggered. And you hear this through nonviolent communication. I hear this from my therapist. When somebody hurts you, you say, when you did this or when this occurred, I felt this. So you're taking responsibility for your own feelings, and I need this to change. And I said, yes, that is a very great way to communicate, but I feel like it's a little backwards, that we are avoiding conflict. We're trying to avoid triggering others with the pain that we've been caused. And really what we need to be doing is teaching people how to be triggered without losing their minds, essentially, without going into turmoil, because we're so worried about how speaking our truths and our feelings and what you did made me feel, that we're essentially not being authentic, because we don't want to upset the other person. And in reality, I really do think we need to go the other way and start teaching, from childhood, like, no, this person's having emotions to how you reacted, and stay present. It is uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to be wrong. It's uncomfortable to have hurt somebody. It's uncomfortable to be out of line. But we need to teach people to sit in that discomfort. So I think we should be roaring. Short story long. I think we should be roaring, and I don't think we should be afraid of our roar upsetting other people, because we've been muting ourselves for so long as a human race, and we're doing it to the earth, and we're doing it to the animals as well. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on roaring.
Well, and trusting I'm like feeling the effects of this full moon right now, and feeling some of the huge, very heavy gravity heavy conversations that it feels like the moon is almost wanting me to have with certain people. And there's like an air clearing that's being asked for. There's purging that's being asked for. And so part of me is like, well, maybe I just need to ride out the moon, like ride out the discomfort, and just like, so that I don't upset relationships. I don't let the fact that I'm on my moon, ruin everything. Because it's like this feeling, I think, when you're in your cycle sometimes, where you just want to blow everything up and start all over again. It's an overwhelm. It's a feeling of overwhelm, which then in hindsight, if you can ride out the feeling, you 3 days later look back and go, whoa, I'm so glad I didn't blow everything up, because I was really kind of a little altered in that time. I was hormonal, everybody. Watch out.
Well, I guess, could we teach ourselves, or could we teach our children, could we teach the world to be able to share what we're experiencing without blowing everything up? Because certainly what you're feeling is valid, and maybe it's the fact we haven't been given the gift or the knowledge of being able to tactfully express that, you know, as opposed to, I mean, that is something that you just said it. That's something that the world has taught us, that women are hormonal and we're not capable of having a clear mind. When I feel like when I'm in my menstrual cycle, I'm very clear. I just need to be able to have the skill set to be able to express that.
Yeah.
Because when somebody has told you your whole life that you are unhinged,
yeah,
during these 5 days, it also, it teaches you that that's the way you have to act.
Right. Yeah, I'm just Sybil putting my head in the oven again, you know?
Yeah. Is it nature or nurture? I don't know.
I love to come at things from a sense of workability rather than right and wrong, good and bad. And being able to express what we're feeling and look for, sometimes in my life, now I'm beyond the moon. I'm beyond the monthly moon, let's say that, at least in terms with bleeding. When I was there, I would not recognize it. It would be, this is just how it occurred in my life, is that I would be finding myself with this unrest, with this restless sense. And there was many times the feeling that something wasn't right. And it would be almost a source of frustration to me, because my husband would say, oh, you're going to start your period. And I would be so mad. No, this is really real. And so I'm looking back now on this to try and see, because that really is how it seemed to occur. As that it was something I wasn't aware that it was in conjunction with that, but there was a sense of restlessness and a sense of trying to look at things newly, is a good way to express it. But with that attitude that something was amiss was at the base of it. So I'm looking back rather than being present in what I'm experiencing. And in that reflecting back, the notion of expressing our feelings and having that space, why we have a circle at full moon time, having that space to share our truths that are true for us, those feelings of those. And often the way to get to the truth of what you're saying is because you're saying it.
Right.
And then you go, oh, that's it. I have to speak it and sort through it. That's not it. That's not it. That's not it. But as I'm speaking forth of it, then I can get to the true heart of what is wanting to be expressed.
Yeah.
So the restlessness, that brings up, the fertility kind of conversation that we've alluded to. And there's a restlessness that I think we also experience around creativity. And I'm actually planning to go through tubal ligation next week. I'll be having surgery to officially end my ability to conceive a child. And I've talked to Sahara about this, and I'm excited about the prospect of being able to reharness that creativity surge that happens in me every month. That is often, for many of us women, I think we think, oh, we're meant to make a baby with that. And in preconception and fertility classes that I've taught for yoga over the years, I've really encouraged women to take some time to track that cycle and check in with, okay, your womb wants to make a thing. Like, that's clear. Is it a human? Like, do we need another human right now? Or is it a book? Is it a song? Is it that you want to go and learn how to sail and can be a competitive sailor? Like, what is that creative burst? And honoring that and listening to the womb, because the womb wants to create, doesn't necessarily have to be a human.
Exactly. Exactly. And even when people have created fibroids or ovarian cysts, it's just another reflection that you're not having enough creative expression in your life. And you're so right. It is the crater of expression. I mean, it is, it is it's the birthplace, it's the bringing forth of it. But how those are creatively expressed is just as unique as each and every one of us. And recognizing that as being as much of a needful happening in our lives as it is to eat and to drink and to do these other things, is to create. And having that expression and knowing that each one of us expresses ourselves uniquely, and that unique bringing of ourselves to the world is something each and every one of us has to do, and nobody can do it for us. I love that so much. I love that so much.
And I'm just noticing what you shared. And Sahara, I'll hand over to you because I bet you've got so many things you want to say about this. But just that anxiety or that restlessness that you were describing, Roxanne, in that pre-menstrual kind of few days, like I'm looking at that and seeing that the body itself is going, it knows it's about to shed. It knows that it's about to purge this creative fuel that was created to create something. And the body's like, quick, you got to do something, act, because you're going to bleed. And then the cycle starts all over again, and we have to start from scratch again. And that just feels like a very primal creative surge that is happening. So then it's about just knowing how to direct that energy so that it's creative and not destructive, perhaps.
Exactly.
Yeah. I feel like that irritability, that feel like you need to get out of your skin. I wonder if we talk to our ancestors, like back 500 years, if they would say the same thing. Because I feel like that might be our bodies complaining about our lack of honoring what's about to happen, our lack of connection, and our mindset, which is, I'm gonna have cramps, I'm gonna be bloated, I'm gonna get pimples, I'm gonna be sluggish. Instead of seeing it as this beautiful thing, oftentimes we're taught that it is a pain in the butt. It is something we have to deal with that is really inconvenient. And our partners even are like, oh God, you're gonna bleed. There's no sex. So even stuff like that, I feel like maybe that irritability and that like discomfort in our own skin might have to do more with lack of honor happening than anything else. I know that years ago when I go into my moon, I started a practice of, I'd wear like really flowy dresses, like very feminine and maternal, and I let myself slow down. I really allowed the fact that my brain works a little bit slower right now, that I feel like I'm under a weighted blanket. And I took it in that same sense that weighted blankets, they feel good. And I allowed myself to feel that goodness, that comfort. And I waddle around the house like I'm, 7 months pregnant, and I'm rubbing my belly like I got a baby in there. And usually I look about 4 months pregnant on the first 2 days of my cycle. And I really bring in that mama energy of being pregnant. Like it is like I'm rubbing the belly, and it's like, what am I going to create? And that I found really helped. And I don't have that PMS thing happening so much anymore, because I almost look at it as joyful. Like, I love my body during that time. I'm so full, like I'm plump. My boobs are big, my skin is kind of dewy. And when I learned to really love that and embrace that belly, embrace that waddle I got going on, yeah, I haven't had the same experiences ever since I started doing that. And as our cycle goes, I mean, essentially, so let's talk from ovulation forward. So ovulation is, no, actually, let's talk from just post bleed. You finished your bleed. It's kind of like a new chapter in the book. And you want to write each chapter as kind of a crescendo, where it's like it peaks in the middle and then it finishes, it all concludes. You wrap everything up and you prep for the next chapter, kind of thing. So you come out and you're fresh, you got a fresh start. And that's like, you've come out of hibernation, kind of. It's very much like cycles. It's spring. And it's like, what am I going to grow? So it's a great time for thinking about, okay, what's next? Looking forward. And as we move towards ovulation, we get more and more energy, more and more cognitive ability. Our brain's chemistry literally changes as we move towards ovulation. When we hit ovulation, we actually are at our peak cognitive activity. So we can choose our words more wisely. We have more clarity of thought. We have more clarity of speech. I'm ovulating right now. This is the perfect time to be doing podcasts. It's the perfect time to be creating notes. Like if you're writing a book or you have some type of art project, making notes of things. What do I want? What do I want? What do I want? That's kind of new moon time. It's like, what do I want? What am I manifesting? And then as we come off of our ovulation, we move slowly into a more dense state. Everything becomes more dense. Our body becomes more dense, our brain, our tongue, like we start to lose. And I think that might be where that irritation comes too, because right before we bleed, our body is like, slow down. And we're like, no, but I got to do things. I got to finish this project. I got to do this. The kids need this. And we're not honoring the fact that we need to slow down. And like, as we enter into that full moon of our bodies, and we are shedding and we are releasing, and it is hibernation. It's winter. It is the full moon. Like, what do I need to let go of? It's a time of introspection. And that is when you birth that creativity. So like, that is the great time to sit and write without any deadlines. So you can use that time to write all of the kind of thoughts and materials and dreams and wishes and where do I want this to go, but not forcing it, allowing it to flow. Like you can't force your period. You have to allow it to happen as it wants to happen. And when you can let all that happen, it's like you get to the end of the chapter and you've got all of this stuff that you've released and you've created. And then it's like you hit that spring, that springtime, and you can rocket yourself forward. And then when you hit ovulation, you can take everything that you just created and pull it forward. That's the time to actually write the book. You've just created all this beautiful stuff. Write it. You've just created all of this beautiful stuff. Paint it, whatever you want to do. But starting to I've been trying to move my life in cycle with my uterus and really honoring no, I'm not going to do a bunch of client calls during my menstruation. I'm not going to do it on any calls. The only thing I do that I have to do on that first cycle day, if it falls on a Monday when I teach, is I have to teach an online yoga class. And I honor that that's where I'm at in that yoga class. We're not going to be doing crazy stuff. This is going to be a slow yoga class. I don't care if it's vinyasa or kundalini or whatever I'm teaching that month. This class is going to be a down class because I'm not going to get out of alignment with myself for anyone, even my students, even my clients, because that's not servicing them properly. I'm not teaching them anything if I'm not setting that example. So starting to bring more sacredness and honoring and just compassion for the everybody out there that's, not woo woo or anything like that, like just compassion. If we could teach our daughters one thing about their moon, compassion.
Mm.
Just, girl, chill. You don't need to be doing life full speed right now.
Mm.
Eat that chocolate, watch that movie,
Mhm.
ask for that foot massage.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mm, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. And those are the types of messages that are a little more frequently around, but it's something that really needs to be embraced and taught and brought
Mm.
to all of our culture.
Mm.
And that's why these conversations along these lines are so vital, because this has been for many, particularly doing the day-to-day grind of just earning and moving and cooking and just those day-to-day grinds. This is a level of orientation that isn't commonly to be had in
Mm.
mainstream education, certainly in mainstream media. So becoming more common, but I'm so in celebration of this conversation and in celebration of the notion that teaching our young ones as they come into womanhood, and even having all rituals to celebrate this is a transition into being alive in womanhood. And it just all of these opportunities to celebrate and bring that intention to it. But
Mm.
thank you. That was beautiful. Thank you.
And that, I feel like that goes back to what you'd said, Sahara, about the kind of breaking the rules and going into the temple
Mhm.
while you're bleeding. And what we're doing here is reframing the idea of your menstrual cycle somehow being a burden, something to
Mhm.
be hidden and overcome, into something that might actually be a source of power for women. And that if we, even just becoming comfortable with seeing our own blood, becoming more conscious of how we're catching that blood each month, is such a powerful thing. And getting to know what ovulation looks like in your body, even, and going, oh, there's actually, I'm always making fluid. There's always something coming out of me, and it's just going to change from week to week, and I'm going to celebrate that rather than fear it and see it as some sort of thing that needs to be treated. um, and get to know it, become intimate with it. And I think this is what midwives offer us, and women working in herbalism, Ayurveda, the yogic and wise woman traditions are encouraging this intimacy with your fluids and with your cycle, because it is personal, it is yours. But there's also a lot of mystery in there, that if we all are doing this and we share our mystery with each other, we can all learn from it. um, I might be like taking it way too far, and my kids may be totally scarred by this, but I allow them to see my menstrual blood and allow them to see me, like I'll show them my full cup, and let them have a look. Whoa, mom, it's kind of goopy, and oh, it's really dark this month, and we'll talk about it. And I'm hoping that it's just completely destigmatizing and desensitizing them to the ick, like it's just a bodily fluid. And frankly, it's not even just a bodily fluid. I think it's sacred. I think it is
Mhm.
very powerful fluid.
Mhm.
There's a reason we've been given this, and it's fluid that creates life, for heaven's sakes. Like, we can make a human out of this stuff.
Mhm.
And we're not giving it the reverence that it deserves.
Mhm.
But we can,
Yeah.
and I think we're trying, and
We
I think we're
can. Yeah.
starting to, and maybe getting the courage to start looking ourselves in the mirror, start looking at our vulva in the mirror. Oh my goodness, imagine that.
That was something, as a midwife, I would make sure that anytime someone was having an exam, I would ask them if they wanted to see their cervix.
Mm.
And for us in this conversation, that's not I mean, like you said, you may be at home looking at the cervix or your vulva and your internal parts as well. And but that for, it's just interesting how foreign that can seem.
Mhm.
And yet, when people do, it's fascinating, and there's no judgment if someone's ready to do the things that, as you have described, Blair.
Oh yeah, because I'm
If
pretty
there is no
extreme. I'm
judgment
very extreme. I
whatsoever.
accept that. I'm probably not your average. I'm going pretty serious about this. Going very feral. I see myself as, it's very undomesticated, uncivilized,
You're
the
just
way that I interact with my menstrual cycle.
the whole point, though. The whole point is that being able to accept all of you and all of this aspects of our lives and our bodies, and recognizing them with that sacredness, with giving honor to it, and not living and not claiming shame for any of this, for any of it, for any of it. It's all part of powerful ones that we are. And at whatever level someone's ready to take a look or consider something else, that will enhance their lives. Whatever
Mhm.
level we can take this in and apply it, whatever little bit that fits, or if the whole body of it fits. Now, I want to make sure that everyone out there knows how to get a hold of these two incredible women. So I just want you each to take a moment or two and say, this is where you find me. Okay. So since you're my co-host, Blair, I'm going to start with you. And then
Okay.
we'll go to our special guest.
Okay. All right. Well, you can find me easily at blairfillingham.com or maternal, mtrnl.com. And Blair at maternal.com are the ways that you'll reach out to me. And always happy to talk about these things. You want to come and sit in my garden and drink some herbal tea and talk about blood? I am all for it. You want to come with me and do a blood moon ritual out in the forest? I'm all about it. Let's do it. So yeah, don't be a stranger.
Ah, Sahara.
Oh, that's awesome. Like, I want to go sit in the garden and talk about blood. Can we talk about poop too?
Yeah, I love talking about poop.
We need to destigmatize these things. Like if our body does it, it should be able to be talked about openly. Like, in that we shouldn't be hiding all this stuff. Because then, you get women who don't know anything. They're like pregnant and they don't know how anything happens. They don't know, it still happens. Like, it's amazing to me that is still happening in this day and age. Yeah. So you can find me at my website, holisticmojo.com. And through that website, you can reach me everywhere. Upper right-hand corner is all the little icons to get to my Etsy page, to my YouTube page, to my Facebook page, to my Instagram page. All the pages through my website, holisticmojo.com.
I love that holistic mojo. I love that this, like, you're someone who takes these sciences and this study of all of these disciplines so seriously, but also not. It's also, there's fun to be had and we can enjoy the process. And as you say, it can be magical. We can make this magical and fun. And I love that you're able to bring so many disciplines to your consulting, Sahara, and reach someone in a truly holistic way. And I think you're the same, Roxanne. It's just all of your disciplines from over the years. These are the midwives. You don't have the qualification, but you're essentially a midwife, Sahara, in that you are with the woman, and you will show up and bring all of these disciplines and ask her what she needs, and guide her on her journey. And that's beautiful. That's the matriarchy doing its thing right there.
Indeed. What a special time that I've so enjoyed our time together. I look forward to many more conversations and circle time.
Mm.
So thank you all again. It's been so rich, and we will meet you in the air on Midwife After Hours, and this will air. Well, the people will know when it's airing, but you will come and join us on the air on Sunday at 11 a.m. on Valley 104.9 FM. Thank you, everyone. Blessings.